I'm sure you've heard the news. Welcome to my channel Worldwise. Are you worried about the future of global trade? The year is 2025, the global trade landscape is on edge. President Trump, in a move that sent shockwaves across the world, announced a new wave of tariffs. These tariffs, essentially taxes on imported goods, targeted a range of countries. China, however, found itself in the crosshairs. The announcement sparked immediate concern among businesses and economists. The tariffs, they feared, could ignite a trade war with unpredictable consequences. Global stock markets reacted swiftly, plunging into the red as investors grappled with the uncertainty. This wasn't the first time Trump had employed tariffs as a trade weapon. Throughout his presidency, he had used them to pressure countries, particularly China, to change their trade practices. This time, however, the stakes seemed higher. The global economy, already grappling with numerous challenges, braced itself for a potential trade war between the world's two largest economies. The world watched with bated breath as the trade war unfolded, its outcome uncertain. One thing was clear: the global trading system, already strained, was entering a period of turbulence. Tariffs, in their simplest form, are taxes imposed on goods imported from other countries. They are a tool used by governments to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. Imagine a country that produces a lot of cars. If a foreign country starts selling cars at much lower prices, the domestic car industry might struggle to compete. In such a scenario, the government might impose a tariff on imported cars, making them more expensive. This price increase could help level the playing field, giving domestic car manufacturers a better chance to compete. Tariffs can be applied to a wide range of goods, from agricultural products to manufactured items. They can be used to protect specific industries or as a way to generate revenue for the government. However, tariffs also have downsides. By making imported goods more expensive, they can lead to higher prices for consumers. This, in turn, can reduce consumer spending and slow economic growth. Moreover, tariffs can lead to retaliatory measures from other countries, triggering a trade war. The Trump administration's tariffs on China were wide-ranging, covering a vast array of goods. From electronics and machinery to textiles and agricultural products, the tariffs impacted a significant portion of Chinese exports to the United States. The stated goal of these tariffs was twofold: to reduce the trade deficit between the two countries, and to pressure China to change what the administration viewed as unfair trade practices. The trade deficit, a measure of the difference between a country's imports and exports, had long been a point of contention between the United States and China. The Trump administration argued that China's trade practices, including intellectual property theft and forced technology transfer, were contributing to this imbalance. By imposing tariffs, the administration sought to force China to the negotiating table and address these concerns. The tariffs, however, also carried significant risks. China, as the world's second-largest economy, was not expected to stand idly by as its exports were targeted. Retaliation was almost certain, and a trade war between the two economic giants could have far-reaching consequences for the global economy. The situation was further complicated by the fact that many American companies relied heavily on Chinese manufacturing. Tariffs on Chinese goods would inevitably impact these companies, potentially leading to higher prices for consumers and disruptions in supply chains. The trade imbalance between the United States and China had been a long-standing issue, but it had grown significantly in the years leading up to the trade war. In 2025, the United States imported over $440 billion worth of goods from China, while exporting only $145 billion. This resulted in a staggering trade deficit of $295 billion. Several factors contributed to this imbalance. China had become the world's manufacturing hub, producing a wide range of goods at competitive prices. American consumers, accustomed to low prices, had developed a strong appetite for Chinese-made products. At the same time, China's growing middle class had not yet translated into a corresponding increase in demand for American goods and services. This imbalance had significant implications for both economies. For the United States, it meant a loss of manufacturing jobs and a decline in certain industries. For China, it meant a heavy reliance on exports and a vulnerability to fluctuations in the American market. The Trump administration argued that this imbalance was unsustainable and that China needed to take steps to reduce it. They pointed to China's currency manipulation, intellectual property theft, and forced technology transfer as unfair trade practices that gave Chinese companies an advantage. Section 5. China bites back, retaliatory tariffs unleashed. China wasted no time in responding to the American tariffs. In a tit-for-tat move, Beijing announced its own set of tariffs on a range of American goods. These retaliatory tariffs targeted key American exports, including agricultural products like soybeans and pork, as well as automobiles and aircraft. The message was clear: China was not going to back down from a trade fight. The Chinese government viewed the American tariffs as an attempt to contain its rise as a global economic power. They were determined to protect their own interests, even if it meant enduring some economic pain in the short term. The Chinese tariffs were carefully calibrated to inflict maximum damage on the American economy, while minimizing the impact on their own. They targeted industries and products that were concentrated in states that were politically important to President Trump. The goal was to sow discord among the American public and put pressure on the Trump administration to back down. The trade war was now in full swing, with both sides digging in their heels. The global economy braced itself for the fallout. Section 6. Global shockwaves, the trade war's ripple effect. The trade war between the United States and China sent shockwaves throughout the global economy. Countries around the world watched with growing concern as the two economic giants slugged it out. The uncertainty created by the trade war had a chilling effect on investment and trade, slowing economic growth in many parts of the world. The tariffs disrupted global supply chains, forcing companies to scramble for alternative sources of materials and components. This led to higher costs for businesses, which were often passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, warned that the trade war could shave off as much as 0.5% of global GDP growth. The trade war also exacerbated existing geopolitical tensions. The United States and China, already locked in a strategic rivalry, used the trade dispute as another arena to challenge each other's dominance. This further fragmented the global trading system, making it more difficult to address common challenges like climate change and pandemics. The trade war highlighted the interconnectedness of the global economy. What started as a bilateral dispute between the United States and China quickly spilled over into the rest of the world, impacting businesses and consumers on every continent. Section 7. Winners and losers, navigating the uncertain terrain. The trade war created both winners and losers. Although the long-term impact was still uncertain, some countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh benefited from the trade diversion as companies sought alternative manufacturing hubs to avoid the tariffs. These countries saw an increase in exports and investment as businesses shifted their supply chains. However, many other countries suffered collateral damage. The European Union, for example, saw its exports to both the United States and China decline as the trade war dampened global demand. Developing countries that relied heavily on exports to either of the two economic giants were particularly vulnerable. Within the United States, the impact of the trade war was mixed. Some industries like steel and aluminum benefited from the tariffs as they faced less competition from Chinese imports. However, other industries like agriculture and manufacturing were hit hard by the retaliatory tariffs imposed by China. The trade war highlighted the complex web of interdependencies in the global economy. It demonstrated that even the world's two largest economies could not escape the consequences of a trade war, and that the costs of such a conflict were likely to outweigh any potential benefits. Section 8. The Future of the Tariff Tango, a Delicate Balancing Act. As of April 2025, the future of the US-China trade war remains uncertain. The tariffs imposed by both sides continue to impact businesses and consumers globally. While some argue that the tariffs are necessary to protect domestic industries and level the playing field, others fear they will ultimately harm global economic growth and lead to a protracted trade war with no clear winners. The situation calls for a delicate balancing act. Both the US and China must weigh the potential benefits of their tariff policies against the risks of further escalating the trade conflict. Finding a resolution that addresses the concerns of both sides, such as intellectual property protection and market access, is crucial. One potential outcome is a negotiated settlement where both sides agree to roll back some tariffs in exchange for concessions on trade practices. This would require compromise and a willingness to find common ground. Another possibility is that the trade war continues to simmer, with neither side willing to back down. This scenario could lead to a prolonged period of economic uncertainty and further fragmentation of the global trading system. The outcome of the US-China trade war will have far-reaching consequences for the global economy. Finding a path towards resolution, rather than escalation, is in the best interest of all parties involved. Stay tuned for my next video, coming up next.